My name is John Mosby. I have the privilege and honor of serving as president of Highline College. July 1 started year 6 of my presidency. Very happy to have a job, very happy to be here at this wonderful institution, and very happy to welcome all of you. For those of you who this is your first time here at the institution, can you give maybe a nod or wave or something? First time here? Well, welcome. Welcome to the Communities College. Welcome to Highline. And the rest of you, I assume, have been here. I see a lot of people I work with. Welcome back. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes because we have a lot on the slate today. I also wanted to say it's very nice to see people in person. Yeah. It's a long time coming. And while we still need to be respectful to folks that aren't always 100% health-wise and choose to be a little bit more reserved and masked up and at home and different things, it's so nice still to see folks here. Our institution, I talk about it as the Communities College, but I really mean that in the sense that, you know, as you probably have heard, or I like to say, we're the most diverse college in the state of Washington. We're one of the most diverse colleges in the country. We are close to 80% students of color. For me as a president, for me as an educator, and at the end of the day, for me as a Black man, okay, it is amazing. Yeah. But with that, with those wonderful statistics come a lot of responsibility. That means we have to think differently. We have to think outside the box. We have to think about how to serve our communities in a non-traditional manner, even though we've been serving or think we've been serving in a traditional manner, which has been really about white supremacy, to be quite honest with you, just to be honest and to name it. Yep. So to be here today and to see the group of you here representing all your areas and choosing to share this space says that you care, it says that you're willing to listen and to strategize, because our communities need it, right? And we need that different, outside the box, courageous kind of conversations. We need to ensure that our communities, if they decide to come here, or any other college for that matter, that they can come here, for example, get a certificate, get a degree, get something that will help them create and build their future and their legacy, right? Now, I come from the Bay Area. I come from California. I mean, I'm home now here in Washington, but you know, I came from the Bay, and I was like, wow, I'm gonna get a house real quick because of the Bay. And my commute, I used to commute 12 miles to work, and it took me an hour and a half each way. And if the Warriors were playing, so a Warriors fan, if the Warriors were playing, it took 3 hours. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna come here, and you know, Washington is different. And I came here, and I'm like, oh, this isn't cheap. I mean, it's not the Bay Area. I say that, it's not the Bay. I don't know how many of you are familiar live in the Bay. It's not the Bay, but it's getting real close. So I'm thinking as a president, and I'm very fortunate to do well, and I've worked very hard to get to that point. But I know for me, if my eyes bug out, I can't imagine other folks who don't have luxury, the privilege, or the various capitals that are needed. So I thank you very much for being here today. I hope you get a lot of good information. I hope you're able to process, take it home, ask questions. I plan to do the same. My last thing is when I come in, they're like, you can sit anywhere. And I'm like, okay, I can sit with my Highline peeps. And they're like, you can see the speaker's table. I'm like, well, I'm not really truly one of the speakers. So, you know, so I saw one of my very dear friends, Dr. Yoshiko Harden, president of Renton Technical College, who used to work here many years ago and created a lot of opportunities that we are still doing now and building upon her legacy. So I can sit next to my girl, right? I can sit next to my friend. So I just want to let the Highline folks know I'm not leaving. I'm just hanging out with the RTC folks. Y'all see me all the time. And I know you're like, man, Mosby, he's going to sit next to the table and he's going to talk. And he's going to talk about how good he looks in the suit because he thinks he's cute, all this other stuff. We're not doing that. I'm going to do that at the RTC table. So, again, thank you all very much for being here. Have a great morning.
Hi everybody, my name is Annie McGrath and I am the President and CEO at the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce. Our chamber was founded on the principle that together we are stronger, and we are absolutely thrilled to be here today in partnership with the Kent and Renton chambers as we all convene our communities around our, thank you, yes. We're so happy to be here with you all as we convene our communities around our shared commitment to advancing economic equity in South King County. On behalf of our chambers and our boards of directors and our staff, we want to thank you all for joining us this morning as we come together to use our collective strength to look for real solutions to the challenges that our communities face today. Here's what our program is going to look like today. First, you are in for a treat because you are going to hear from Keynote Zenovia Harris, who is a dear friend and an amazing leader here in South King County. Following Zenovia's presentation, we have the honor of welcoming State Treasurer Mike Pellicciotti to the stage. And then that will be followed by Luis Navarro, the Director of Workforce Development for the Port of Seattle. And finally, Irene Torres, a new TRP 120 graduate. And I think everyone in this room will know what that means by the end of Irene's presentation. Today's presentations will be followed by a moderated panel discussion, and after our program concludes, we invite you all to please stay and connect with the speakers and others in the room today, because today is all about building connections and relationships.
Thank you, Annie. What a beautiful event and opportunity to collaborate with some of the finest minds in business and advocacy. Hearing President Mosby speak of sitting with Renton Technical College and the camaraderie reminded me of the camaraderie that I share with Annie and Zenovia with Seattle Southside and Kent. And it holds so true that together we are stronger. And I appreciate, heartfelt appreciation to the two of you and your teams for the work that you do and the ability to walk alongside with both of you. I'm inspired and humbled by both of you. Thank you. I have the honor and pleasure today of introducing you to my colleague, and I proudly say my friend. Zenovia Harris is an accomplished author, fierce and innovative powerhouse executive with a heart for youth. Zenovia is a certified diversity professional who served as the president for Washington Diversity Council Advisory Board, where she learned the importance of being a trusted DEI messenger. Zenovia has worked with the National Diversity Council, ANU, Lower Columbia College, Mount Vernon Chamber of Commerce, University of Phoenix, Kirkland Chamber of Commerce, Renton Chamber of Commerce, and the Washington State Community Associations Institute, to name a few. Now, speaking from a place of experience and having participated in a plethora of trainings, I often speak of Zenovia's training and the DEI work that she has done with Renton Chamber of Commerce as the best, the most impactful, and truly inspirational DEI training that I have ever experienced, and the most growth that I have experienced as an adult and as a human in the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I thank you for your approach to that end. Zenovia has also worked with Skagit Valley College, South Community College, Construction Center of Excellence for Marine and Manufacturing and Technology, whereas participants receive professional development hours for their participation in her workshops. In the last decade, Zenovia has worked in higher education, sales and marketing, and has owned her own businesses and understands the impact DEI initiatives have on successful organizations. In 2019, Zenovia was appointed as the Chief Executive Officer for the Kent Chamber of Commerce, becoming the first African American CEO to lead this chamber in its over 70 years. Her role serves as the spokesperson for the business community in the 6th largest city in the state of Washington, which is ranked number 8 in the most diverse cities in America, according to Wallet Hub. Along with her CDPs, Zenovia holds a bachelor's degree in business management, a master's in public administration, a real estate license, and a signing notary certification with the NNA. In January 2023, King County Executive Dow Constantine awarded Zenovia with the 2023 Larry Gossett Service Award, which acknowledges her significant contributions in the areas of racial equity, social justice, and our human rights. I am proud to welcome to the mic Zenovia Harris.
I'm going to say good morning to my fellow equity warriors here today. As stated, thank you so much, Diane. My name is Zenovia Harris, and I have the pleasure of being the CEO for the Kent Chamber of Commerce. I do have to note it says President and CEO. In our neck of the woods, I am the CEO, and our President for 2023 is John Scully with the Scully Agency. Before I get started today, I do want to acknowledge my sisters in this work. I want to acknowledge you and McGrath. Thank you so much for leaning into this work. I know last year we canceled this event right when you were starting, and just your tenacity to make sure that we got this off. We got it off on the right foot. I just commend you for that. I also commend you for the work that you're doing within your own organization. And what most of us should be doing is putting our money where our mouth is as it relates to the education that you want your board and your community to have around equity. Diane, Dobson, Diane, I just want to say thank you so much for being an advocate for Zenovia and a supporter of Zenovia. Zenovia the person, Zenovia the CEO, Zenovia the whole person. And that is the true epitome of equity, accepting people who they are with all of their talents and not bottlenecking them into where you think that they should be. So thank you so much for that, Diane. And last but not least, my sister, Samantha Lee, in this work. I see you as a woman of color working hard to ensure that our businesses and our community are served the way they want to be served. You will always have a supporter in me. No matter where my path takes me, where you go, you can always lean on me to be able to support you. So I see you, I feel you, and I support you. So my sisters in this work, thank you very much. Okay, so I am so honored to be here today to be able to have this keynote and stand before you as an award-winning certified diversity professional who is dedicated to the pursuit of economic equality. Our community is a tapestry of diverse individuals and experiences, yet the thread of economic disparities persist. We live in a world where progress and advancements are celebrated, but for me and my vantage point, it's disheartening to acknowledge that the inequity continues to weave its way through the fabric of our beautiful communities. This persistence of economic disparity reminds us that despite the strides that we have taken, not all members of our community have had the opportunity to progress equally or equitably. Those are two different things. I'll say it again. Not all members of our communities have been able to partake in the benefits of progress equally or equitably. Today, we embark on a journey from conversation to action as we delve into the critical topic of economic equity and explore 3 actionable takeaways that can drive positive change. If you've ever worked with me before, or my consulting firm, you will know that my tagline is where DEI messaging meets practical application. What that means for you today is that if you are expecting me to review statistics, give an overview of case studies to explain why we are in the position we are and why these inequities exist, you, my friend, are in for a very long 15 minutes. Do not hold your breath, okay? But know that in this 20 minutes, I want to inspire you, I want to encourage you to make changes that will benefit those who are unable to tap into our economic opportunities. I need to make a point though. These threads of disparities persist not due to lack of awareness or concern, but often as a result of deeply entrenched historical biases, systemic inequalities, and structures that perpetuate the unequal distribution of resources. These threads represent the aspirations of our kids that go unfulfilled, our community members whose talents go untapped, and the potential that goes unrealized, all due to the factors beyond that individual's control. Recognizing that these threads of disparities persist serves as a call to action for everyone in this room. It urges us to unravel the intricacies of inequality and address the root causes that perpetuates its existence. It's a reminder that our conversations about economic equality and equity must be accompanied by deliberate actions that disrupt the status quo and pave the way for a more inclusive and just society. In the context of my keynote today that's titled From Dialogue to Drive, Paving the Path to Economic Equity, acknowledging the persistence of these threads is the first step towards channeling real action. Channeling our conversations into real action. By doing so here today, we commit to weaving a tapestry where every thread is strong, where every story is valued, where every individual's potential is realized, regardless of their backgrounds or the communities in which they live. While our region has seen remarkable growth and development, the undeniable truth is that not all residents share in those benefits equally. The dissonance between progress and equal opportunity challenges us to move beyond the realm of discussion and delve into the realm of tangible action. The driving force that propels us forward lies in comprehending the profound significance of economic equity. Imagine, just for a moment, a South King County where every individual, regardless of their ethnicity, their gender, their socioeconomic background, has access to the same opportunities. Envision a landscape where the path to success is not dedicated by historical biases or structural obstacles. This isn't just an idealistic vision, it's a necessity for fostering a truly inclusive and thriving community. This vision isn't merely a moral imperative, it's also a smart economic solution. Research studies that focus on regions similar to ours consistently unveil a compelling connection between economic equity and overall prosperity. Communities that actively address economic disparities have a surge in innovation. They have a reduction in social tensions and a remarkable boost in economic growth. All by providing equal access to education, training, resources, we create an environment where untapped talents can flourish and where the benefits of progress are shared by all. The reality that achieving economic equity requires targeted efforts and collaborative commitment. And we heard from our partners today, we are not going to be able to do this alone. It means breaking down systemic barriers that disproportionately affect marginalized communities, particularly in a region as culturally diverse as ours, here in South King County. It entails reforming policies that perpetuate inequality, fostering business landscape that champions diversity, and providing a robust support system for the underrepresented individuals to thrive. Now, like I said before, this is about action. So I'm going to go into 3 takeaways for you today. I do want to make a note that this is not for you to look to your neighbor. This is not for you to look to the president of the college, to the directors that are sitting in the room, to the CEOs that are sitting in the room. If you are in this room, you can make a change. You are also a leader. So I'm going to use that term loosely but deliberately. You lead within your own community to ensure that things change, and I'm going to just give you a few examples of how you can make that happen. Now's a good time to write it down. Key takeaway number 1, awareness with purpose. Passive discussions will no longer suffice. You need awareness with purpose. This needs to be active and informed conversations that hold the power to make lasting impact. When we discuss awareness, we're not merely referring to surface level understanding. It goes deeper. It's about immersing ourselves in the stories of individuals who are directly experiencing the effects of economic disparities. It's about seeking out the voices that may have been silenced or overlooked, and truly actively listening to their experiences, their challenges, and their aspirations. Understanding that awareness is just the beginning is crucial. It's not a destination, but a catalyst for change. Armed with this awareness, we can unravel the layers of systemic bias and structural racism that perpetuate economic inequality. This newfound awareness that you have should fuel you and your commitment to building an economic landscape where every individual has an opportunity to not only survive, but to thrive. Take, for instance, in our world, this is what we live in. We hear this every day. Stories of local entrepreneurs who face barriers accessing funding. That stifling, what it does is it lessens their ability to grow and contribute to our economic vitality. So by engaging in conversations with these entrepreneurs, we can understand this systemic challenges they encounter and become advocates for equitable lending practices. I am certain that you've heard that before. But what I have to tell you though is there's a caveat to that. Make sure, along with focusing on equitable lending practice, you also couple that with financial literacy and ensure that they fully understand how to be a fiscally responsible business owner. You cannot provide someone with the resource and then not give them the information they need to make the most and the best out of that resource. So by internalizing these narratives, we bridge the empathy gap and create a foundation for change. This is empathizing with real people whose lives are impacted. It's about being inspired to take meaningful action, whether through supporting local business, advocating for policy change, or promoting educational programs that empower the underserved communities. Awareness with purpose means committing to continuous education and self-examination. I'd write that down. Awareness with purpose means committing to continuous education and self-examination. Let's challenge ourselves to actively seek out perspectives that differ from our own. For example, roundtable discussions with the community you're trying to help. Make sure that you partner with a trusted messenger to be able to do that, to bring those people to the table, to ensure the conversations that you are having are not the same conversations that are harming them already. I would say being a person who is constantly tapped on the shoulder and asked to speak for my community, I want to tell anyone doing that, make sure that you pay people for their expertise. These are hard conversations. These are not conversations where I wake up and I say, I want to talk about all the barriers I face on a daily basis, and then I got to smile in about 2.5 hours to talk to a funder or a donor or a partner or an investor. You have to ensure that when you're gathering these people for these conversations, that you are investing in them and their time is valuable, and ensuring that any information that you glean from them, that information is then shared, reshared, supported, and if it's not going anywhere, please tell them it's not going anywhere. Okay? Takeaway number 2, empowerment through advocacy. Empowerment through advocacy serves as a bridge between awareness and tangible action. We are in a region pulsating with diverse voices and experiences, and our advocacy can become a potent force for propelling economic equality and equity. Advocacy in this context is not a passive endeavor. It's a purposeful commitment to affecting change. It involves leveraging our collective voices, our influence, and our networks. By engaging with local legislators, policymakers, and community leaders, we can advocate for measures that ensure fair access to education, healthcare, affordable housing, and employment opportunities. Advocacy amplifies the concerns of a marginalized community, transforming them into actionable policy solutions. Yet, empowering through advocacy goes beyond legislative changes. It's about championing economic equity in our everyday interactions and our decisions. Business owners can play a pivotal role by implementing inclusive hiring practices and fostering diverse workplaces that offer equal opportunities for advancement. Have you ever thought about working with people who have been just as involved? Have you had a conversation of what that's going to look like? Have you reevaluated the need to have a bachelor's degree in basket weaving to build widgets? Probably not necessary, right? So educational institutions can embed their economic equity discussions within their curriculum, equipping students with the knowledge and tools to advocate for themselves and to advocate for others. It's about standing up for those who've been sidelined, amplifying their voices, and ensuring their concerns are not just heard, but addressed. By doing so, we create a ripple effect that extends far beyond our immediate circles, igniting change at both micro and macro levels. This takeaway reminds us that advocacy isn't a solitary endeavor, it is a communal commitment. It is a resounding affirmation that economic equity is not a privilege, it is a right. Through collaboration, we become the change makers, the policy influencers, and the advocates who contribute to reshaping South King County's economic landscape for the better. My final point in action for today: collaborative solutions. To truly pave the path to economic equity, we must embrace collaborative action, recognizing that isolated efforts may yield limited results, but collective endeavors can spark transformational change. Businesses, governments, nonprofits, and individuals must co-create strategies that address these disparities historically. Please know that the challenges posed by economic inequality are complex and multifaceted, requiring a collective effort to address them comprehensively. Our diversity is our strength, and by pooling our resources, expertise, and perspectives, we can drive impactful change. Collaboration, it's about forging partnerships with local organizations, businesses, community leaders who share the same commitment to economic equity. By collaborating, we combine our strengths, our resources to develop innovative solutions that address our unique needs in our community. For example, businesses can collaborate with nonprofits to offer mentorship programs for underrepresented youth. Local government agencies can partner with community organizations to create financial literacy workshops and empower individuals to take control of their own economic futures. This collaborative approach amplifies our impact. It allows us to implement solutions that are holistic, that are sustainable, and rooted in the diverse needs of our community. By working together, we create a synergy that propels us toward a more economically equitable county. As we internalize these takeaways, cultivating awareness with purpose, empowering through advocacy, and embracing collaborative solution, let's envision the transformation we can achieve together. Economic equity is not an abstract concept. It's a tangible goal that we can actively work towards, ensuring that every resident in South King County has the opportunity to thrive and to contribute to our shared prosperity. In closing, let's recall the journey that we've taken today. From dialogue to drive, economic equity is not a destination. It is a continuous voyage that demands our unwavering commitment. By cultivating awareness with purpose, empowering advocacy, and embracing collaborative solutions, we become the architects of our change and what we want to see. Thank you so much for your dedication to this cause. As we stand on the cusp of action, remember that every step forward contributes to the mosaic of economic equity we strive to create. Together, let's forge ahead and pave a path to a more just and prosperous future. And in other words, talking about something and doing something are are two totally different actions. What are you going to do? Thank you.
Zenovia, I always take away so much from when you speak and when you share. Your wisdom and grace as we grow forward together is making a difference. You are a game changer. Your approach towards equity and bias can change the world, and we are so lucky to have you in our midst. Thank you. I next have the opportunity and honor to introduce Washington State Treasurer, Mike Pellicciotti. Mike was elected Washington's 24th State Treasurer in 2020. As Washington's Chief Financial Officer, Mike is dedicated to financial transparency, protecting Washington's financial health, and advancing policies that best serve our state's working families and retirees. Before becoming treasurer, he served 2 terms in the Washington House of Representatives, where he served on House fiscal committees, including the Capital Budget Committee. In the legislature, Mike fought for more equitable and open government, passing laws to get dark money out of politics, and requiring that the legislature provide its public records. Before representing the 30th Legislative District of South King and North Pierce counties, Mike was an assistant attorney general who managed a state unit that combated economic fraud in Washington. He has a bachelor's degree in business administration. He received his master's in rural development as a United States Fulbright Scholar, where he studied economic development. His Juris Doctor is from Gonzaga University, and he is a lifelong fan of Gonzaga basketball. Welcome to the stage, Mike Pellicciotti.
Well, thank you so much. It actually is so great actually to be back at Highline College and to see Dr. Mosby. I don't know where he went. I saw him. There he is back there, who I've obviously worked very closely with. As she was mentioning, I represented South King and North Pierce counties in the legislature, so this was always our local school, and so it's really great to be back on campus, and it's particularly great to have with me Jesse Johnson, who served as my colleague, as my seatmate in the legislature from the 30th District, who now works in the Treasurer's office, and also is a trustee of Highline College. So all good things. But I really just want to start off by thanking the incredible leadership of the CEOs here, Annie McGrath, Diane Dobson, and especially Zenovia Harris for her powerful words. And I'm going to call a little bit of an audible here. It's a retirement for things to talk about. But there's really a focus I've had since coming into the office in 2021, which is the notion that everyone should have economic opportunity at birth and should have a secure retirement throughout their life. And so while I have a limited period of time to talk today, I want to focus on the front end of that a little bit more. And while we're doing a lot of work on retirement and making sure people have retirement access and retirement security, I think following up on what Zenovia was just talking about in terms of action, what's important is that we talk about what actually we can do to transform and change the system in moving forward. And one of the things that our office and the Office of the State Treasurer that I can do as a statewide elected official is I can actually request legislation to the legislature. And a piece of legislation that we have now introduced that is currently pending with the state legislature is called the Washington Future Fund. And the Washington Future Fund was created under the concept of the baby bonds concept. Some of you might be familiar with the baby bonds concept. This is the idea of saying, setting aside money for children at birth so that it grows throughout their lifetime, so that when they are a young adult, they have access to the capital needed to remove the institutional barriers that often deny access to economic opportunity. And so the Washington Future Fund was introduced after a year of very thoughtful review. We had incredible community leaders. Jesse led the Washington Future Fund Committee. Incredible community leaders help us kind of put community before policy, and really created a policy that has now been well vetted, is constitutional, and works. It pencils out where we are saying that in order to address kind of the economic inequities that exist, we need to get capital to people. We have to remove those capital barriers. And in the state of Washington, we identify low-income births as those births born pursuant to a Medicaid-funded birth, an Apple Health-funded birth, That is 47% of the births in the state of Washington. Let me say that again. 47% of the births in the state of Washington are Medicaid-funded births. And that is obviously particularly pronounced in communities where, for a number of reasons, there have been institutional barriers, but it's also pronounced in communities throughout the state. In rural Washington, it's 2 out of 3 births. In several rural counties, it's 3 out of 4 births. In tribal communities, 82% of births. So we cannot address issues of economic inequities until we address issues of access to capital and make sure we remove those capital barriers. So what our office has introduced is the Washington Future Fund, which would say for every child born in the state of Washington pursuant to an Apple Health funded birth, for every child born, we're asking that the legislature set aside $4,000 for each of those children at birth. And that those funds are then invested throughout that child's lifetime up until their 35th birthday, in which they can claim it at any time between age 18 and 35. And that when those funds have grown, because again, for families of means, that's what they do. For families who are privileged enough to be able to set money aside for their kids, they set money aside at birth. They set up the savings account, they set up the CDs, they put out the savings bonds. Well, the parents of the kids who cannot afford that are no less loving, and they would do it if they could. But it is important that if we do not see that capital investment at birth, those inequities are developing literally within minutes of a child's birth. We have to start at the beginning. And that's what the Washington Future Fund would do, is it would set aside that money so that throughout that child's birth, that money would be invested in the same way we invest our pension funds. Through our state investment board, they invest the pension funds. These funds would be invested in a similar way. So that when those children are young adults, that money now has grown, the benefits of compounding interest, to $15,000, $25,000, $35,000. And that those funds could then be directed to one of 3 wealth building tools, wealth building channels. Option 1, so it's not like someone's getting a check. It's not at age 18, the check's showing up. It's that the money has grown and is now capital that's available to meet those needs and remove those capital barriers, and can be directed to one of 3 wealth building tools. And we developed these wealth building tools in close collaboration with Dr. Derek Hamilton, who has really been a leader in the baby bonds concept. We've worked very closely with him over the last couple of years. And these wealth building tools would be option 1. It can be directed toward educational pursuits, including the trades and apprenticeships. So it can be used obviously for college opportunities and things like that. That would be great. But it's also important to remove those capital barriers that even limit people's access to apprenticeship opportunities. Because we think, oh, well, go into the apprenticeships, that's great. Time and time again, I hear from folks who say, hey, we can't get folks into apprenticeships because they need to do a pre-apprenticeship program. Former Representative Jesse Johnson was a huge leader on pre-apprenticeship opportunities, but tell somebody who's doing a pre-apprenticeship program who is not going to be paid for a couple months to take a couple months off and not be paid and do a pre-apprenticeship program. It's just not going to happen. We have to remove those capital barriers, and something as simple as that. Or I talk to a lot of my labor friends who say, even if we get someone into an apprenticeship, they still need $7,000 or $8,000 often to have the licensing costs paid for. Well, for a lot of folks, $8,000, you might as well tell them $8 million. These are capital barriers that we have to remove. And so that is one option. Those funds can be directed toward that purpose. Option 2, it could be directed toward entrepreneurial opportunities. A lot of what we were just hearing, talked about, those capital barriers that often deny folks the access to even the opportunity to provide entrepreneurial development in their community. Someone might have the best business plan. It might pencil out, it might be great. Well, what's the first thing that someone's going to tell them? Where's your capital? Where's your seed money? Where's your skin in the game? We have to remove those capital barriers. This is an opportunity to make sure that those funds could be going toward that as well. And then these funds obviously are being invested in the communities where for time and time again, capital has not been invested. Third option, the funds can be directed toward property ownership. So we can finally remove those generational barriers that deny people the access to wealth creation that often comes with property ownership. ownership. Because again, talk to somebody, talk to a millennial today, right? Like, would they like to own a house? Absolutely. Well, the only folks that I know that are millennials who are able to own houses today are those who say, oh, thank goodness grandma put that Boeing stock aside for me. Thank goodness that savings account was set up for me. That is not sustainable, it is not just, and we have to interrupt those cycles. And so if someone waits until their 35th birthday and has $25,000 or $35,000 waiting for them to be used for that down payment on property, folks can now actually own property and interrupt those cycles. Because there's a lot of talk about building 900,000 new homes over the next 20 years in the state of Washington. That's great, 900,000 new homes. Who's going? And there's a lot of state investment to build those homes. A lot of investment from all of you to build those homes. But who's going to own those homes? Is it going to be the same corporations and institutional investors that own them now and are going to rent them out now to the kids of the folks that they're renting it to now? Or are we going to interrupt that cycle and allow for that wealth creation to interrupt these issues related to the economic inequities that lead to wealth gaps and wealth inequities? So these are things that are doable. This is a proposal that is well vetted, and we've asked the legislature just to take a portion of the funds that, hey, the good news is Treasurer's Office has been working hard. We've sent the legislature now $1.8 billion in new money through just our investment efforts, the Treasurer's Office. We're saying the legislature just take a portion of that to set it aside to meet these needs, to allow for us to truly interrupt this cycle. This is something that's doable. And I want to point out, I see Senator Hasegawa here, and I see Representative Orwell here, who are both co-sponsors of this legislation. Can you give them both a round of applause, please? But that's what it's going to take. It is going to take a partnership, incredible leadership at the chamber level who are really rising and elevating these issues so we can deal with a lot of the challenges we see today. But it is going to take that thoughtful leadership by the legislature to move these efforts forward so we can finally truly interrupt these cycles. Now, what I will say is that is not an easy sell. It is not an easy sell to go to the legislature and say, hey, don't spend this money now, set it aside and truly transform the lives of children who have not been born yet. It seems like it should be an easy sell, but it's not, and for good reason, because legislators have a lot of other issues that they're dealing with. They're hearing from constituents who say, we want these funds now. I get it. But if we are truly going to bring the change that we want to see, that we've been talking about this morning, the only way it will happen is with a long-term view. Anyone who tells you differently, that this can be dramatically changed in one bill overnight, is not giving it to you straight. But we can do it when we put the investment on our side in a way that is affordable and doable, that it allows for it to grow over a period of time. And I will end by saying this. This proposal related to the Washington Future Fund, this baby bonds proposal, bipartisan support. I've finished up a 39 county tour, 121 meetings around the state. It has been endorsed by the Yakima Herald, the newspaper in Pullman, the Aberdeen Daily World, which is on the peninsula, the Vancouver Columbian, which is down in Vancouver, Washington, Everett Herald. This has bipartisan support because we're addressing the root cause, which is poverty. And if we can finally interrupt this cycle, we can truly move things forward. And it's really through the great leadership of people like Jesse Johnson, who's been leading this effort in our office, moving this forward, and the great Washington Future Fund Committee that put this proposal forward. So I did kind of go with an audible because I was going to talk about retirement. We're actually doing a lot of work on that too, which is great and really important, I promise you. But I was moved by the comments this morning that when we're talking about action, we need things that are tangible. And I want us to leave a discussion today with the notion, not just that this is an issue that needs to be addressed, but there are paths forward to truly transform it and move us forward. And I just, again, want to thank the legislators that are here, Representative Orwell and Senator Hasegawa, who have that vision and have co-sponsored this. And I'm confident are going to continue to move this forward in the legislature. Thank you again.
I now have the honor of introducing Luis Navarro. Luis Navarro is the Director of Workforce Development in the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at the Port of Seattle. The port supports over 200,000 jobs in the region, and their vision is to add 100,000 more jobs through economic growth led by the port for a total of 300,000 port-related jobs in the region, all while reducing our environmental footprint. The port is committed to creating opportunity for all, stewarding our environment responsibly, partnering with surrounding communities, promoting social responsibility, conducting themselves transparently, and holding themselves accountable. Luis is responsible for the overall community workforce development strategy of the port, in particular working with BIPOC, immigrant, and refugee communities through investments and partnerships with industry and community-based organizations to increase a qualified and diverse labor force in the port sectors of aviation, maritime, construction, and green careers. Prior to his current role, Luis managed the real estate department at the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, and before joining the port, Luis worked for domestic and international air carriers for over 20 years in finance, procurement, corporate real estate, airport facilities development, and airport relations. Luis is also an adjunct professor at Lake Washington Technical College, where he teaches aviation management. Luis, I welcome you to the stage.
How wonderful to be speaking about economic opportunities, economic development, and on behalf of the Port of Seattle Commission, we have an amazing commission with the commissioners that are committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion through action. We also have the leadership of the port, Steve Metrok, our executive director, and my boss, Mukta Gazar. We are all committed to this work and hoping that we can lead and encourage other public agencies to do more if it is within our authority or their authority to do more. So, Senator Hasegawa, it's good to see you. As always, thank you to all the elected officials that do so much work and that allow us to do this work. So I'll start and I'll go through a set of slides. I have an MBA from the University of Washington, and I think they teach you slides and PowerPoints more than they teach MBA stuff. So we'll go through that today. Next slide, please. So we'll go through a few items of, I think, importance that are part of the conversation today. But we'll talk about what is our legal authority at the Port of Seattle. We'll talk a little bit about the 2022 results, which is a full year, although we are almost in September. We have a lot of stuff going on. What programs we support, what the emerging trends and challenges that we see, priorities, and then the partnerships, which are so important. Some of our partners are here. Karen with a new, Kian with partner in employment, maybe Port Jobs is here as well. And next slide, please. And next slide. So the core principles of our work in my department is advancing regional workforce development and port-related industries. We talk about port-related industries because it's important to stick to that because of our limited authority. We are a limited purpose government agency, and in the next slide I'll talk about it. We integrate the values of equity, prioritize the most vulnerable in our communities, who are in many ways the employees at the airport and in the maritime industry. We want to talk about and pursue programs that are cultural and language appropriate. Many of our workers in the port industries are immigrant and refugees. And we support community-based organizations through contracts. I have an accent, I'm an immigrant myself, just to get it out of the way. I was born and raised in a little country, Costa Rica, that you may have heard of. The beautiful birds and wonderful nature. My entire family is there, and you can come with me next time I go and I'll be your tour guide. No charge. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, we have a limited authority, and that authority is granted by the legislature. We are a port, one of 75 ports in the state of Washington, and our mission can only be granted through legislature action. We were given an enhanced authority to include workforce development as a priority and as an economic development element of our mission, and that's how my department, the workforce development team, can spend money in the areas that the legislature decided are appropriate for the Port of Seattle in particular. Then our internal machinery that allows me to do this work includes the Century Agenda, the 25-year plan of the Port Commission, workforce development resolution that was approved by our commissioners, which is my roadmap, and all those documents are available online if you want to check them out, or talk to me afterwards and I'll give you more information. And we know that the regional demographics are changing, have changed, and we need to adjust to that. More women, people of color in the workforce, and we want to help them get trained for the jobs that our employers at the airport and in the maritime industry are saying they need people, and we're trying to help that fill that gap. And all of our work is data-driven, because we're not just going to spend our limited funds in areas that we think are important, but that we know are important based on surveys from our employers. Thanks. So these are some results from 2022, and it shows that now that the pandemic is behind us, the numbers continue to increase of employment needs at the airport in particular, but also in the other sectors. Construction, for example, we build very expensive terminals, $1 billion international terminal at the airport. In the maritime, we're also investing a lot of money in capital. In fact, for the next 5 years, the port is going to invest about $1 billion a year in capital projects, which translates into millions of hours of construction. So we are placing people into apprenticeships and in jobs at the airport. And the numbers speak for themselves, how they continue to grow. We support training of individuals from pre-apprenticeship into apprenticeship. At the airport, we have a couple of programs. One is a very successful AMT, or Aviation Maintenance Technician program. The airlines at the airport tell us we need aircraft mechanics. So we intentionally talk to workers at the airport in the entry-level jobs and get them ready to become aircraft mechanics 2 years down the road, working with South Seattle College and port jobs. And that is a successful program. We're starting a second such career program. Airlines tell us we don't have enough ground service equipment at the airport mechanics. So we're now providing some funding and training to get people from our communities into aviation ground service equipment program, which is a very specialized type of mechanic. We also work with ANU and Urban League, getting people into the trades as well, carpenters, electricians. There is a gap, and I have a chart that will show what we are seeing and why it is important. One, to be data-driven, and two, to be intentional to bring women and people of color. This next slide, please. So the programs we support are those related to port-related industries, in aviation, in construction, in maritime, and green careers. And we specifically have programs in each sector, and I can make a presentation for each sector because it is so wonderfully both complex but also rewarding to see people gravitate into stuff that careers that maybe they didn't think they wanted to pursue, but with conversations and through our amazing partners, as I mentioned, ANU, Urban League, PI, Partner in Employment, and Port Jobs and others, we're telling individuals, give it a try, we'll pay for your initial training, and they are just finding that they were always wanting to be a carpenter or an aircraft mechanic in this case. So we spend a lot of time and a lot of money in each program with our partners in the community and help people think of themselves as a professional, a career. The commission has been very clear that we don't want to just give people an opportunity to find a job, but to create a career path and a career that will lead to a family wage job. And that is truly the most important outcome that we can present to our commissioners and to our community. We are giving people the chance to be a professional in a career, not just a job. Next slide, please. We use for our intentional outreach an equity index that the Port of Seattle has developed. It has 21 parameters. Livability, I wrote it down here because I forget, is accessibility, economic access, environment, and livability. Under those titles, there are several subsets, 21 traits, 21 parameters that creates the Port of Seattle's equity index. The lighter color means people with least equity in our communities live there. The darker colors means people actually have a lot of access to resources. So we're spending money where our equity index says, here is where you need to invest. South King County is such a region, right? There is a way that you can manipulate the index, go on the Port of Seattle equity index map. You can manipulate, you can actually do by street, by neighborhood, by zip code, and it'll tell you what is happening in that particular part of the city or the region. And we, the red dots or the purple dots is where our highest investments are happening, where it is needed. Not exclusively, but where it is the most needed. So we're using data again to guide our work. Next slide, please. Let's talk about trends, challenges, and opportunities. Next slide. So the undersupply of skilled labor, that has been determined in the construction sector in particular, and I'll show you in the next slide what I mean by that. Lack of capacity in community-based organizations. We government agencies would like to do more, and we're asking our wonderful partners, can you do more? We're gonna give you a bigger contract, we're gonna give you more money, but they are also telling us that they themselves are suffering from lack of capacity. Their staff cannot handle as much money as we may want them to have. Their capacity to train more people is limited by facilities, by other factors. So we also need to start thinking as public agencies giving contracts, are we overburdening our wonderful partners? We don't want them to be either burnt out, or we don't want them not to be able to deliver on the expectation of a higher contract. We need to really pay attention to that. And also, we need to also understand that part of our money in that contract should be given to the staff of that nonprofit organization so they get more money and they get to stay. Otherwise, they're gonna be burnt out and leave that organization, which is gonna create a bigger problem. So we need to start thinking a higher percentage of our dollars should be used to pay the staff in those nonprofit organizations. Like Zenovia said, you don't invite people, you don't pay for their conversation. If you are gonna use the nonprofit in a bigger way, let's give their staff a better chance by giving them a little more money so they stay there and not leave. The data sharing is a real issue. We need to make sure that all of us public agencies share similar data. And there are barriers with the state labor and industries, how they have some privacy barriers that are not allowing us to understand in the apprenticeship world how they are moving from job to job by following the particular individuals, because we want to know what is happening with our training dollars. Where are those apprentices going? Are they becoming journey workers or not? Childcare is the one issue that is bubbling up in the jobs, like at the airport. And I had a conversation with Hian of PI. I'm gonna mention our conversation about childcare during she called it odd hours. I call it hours when people at the airport are working late evenings or early mornings. Childcare for those individuals at that time is really difficult, and in particular, immigrant and refugee communities working those early morning shifts or late hour shifts. Childcare in construction is a huge issue. And I'll show the slide next that shows the gap that we see in 5 years of construction workers. But that gap has to be filled by immigrant refugees, women in the trades, but childcare prevents them from doing so. And Karen with Anu who's here, you probably hear that from your pre-apprentices as well. We have a pre-apprentice here who is probably dealing with it. You have a child at home. Equity center hiring practices in port industries. Language access is hugely important to make sure that our immigrant refugee communities are feeling that they are welcome into a job and that we are providing some language access and support. Next slide. So here is just I'm not going to go through the numbers, but the important number is there is a gap, regional annual average gap or shortage of 5,000 pretty much workers in construction. How can we close that gap? By investing in more organizations like ANU, but also by ensuring that pre-apprentices that become apprentice and eventually become journey workers stay on that path. When a person moves from pre-apprentice and they need some money to stay as a pre-apprentice because it's 6 weeks or 12 weeks, they do not get paid. How can we make sure that they become an apprentice? Now you're an apprentice, you're a woman of color or a black male. What is going to happen to you that first year, that second year? There is such a drop off by the third year. Racism, sexism, lack of child care. The experience of an apprentice over 3 or 4 years is one that we're trying to learn what is happening. So we just signed a contract with ANU, and we're asking ANU to follow that person up to 4 years. We want to know what happens. So talking about investing into the future, my wonderful bosses would like results like that in some instances. Now I'm telling them we gotta wait 4 years to learn what happened to that apprentice. Why that black male or that woman dropped out from carpentry or electrician. Was it sexism? Was it lack of transportation? Was it bias? Was it child care? We are going to track that information and be able to hopefully share with other public agencies what we learn and address those issues at the root cause. Next slide. Oh, the same is happening in other sectors as well. So community capacity building, working with nonprofits to help them be a better nonprofit and a better service provider. But we know, as I mentioned earlier, they're also feeling the burden of not having enough staff and the staff feeling overburdened. How can we as public agencies help them? And we're trying to figure that out, working with our partners as well. Next slide. And the strategic partnerships are so key, right? The college systems. We are working with South Seattle College in this AMT, Aviation Maintenance Technician program that I mentioned earlier, and they tell us that the students registering for the 2-year program at South Seattle College in aviation maintenance are more diverse because we at the airport are sending a more diverse cohort every year of students, women and men of color. Working with public agencies together, so we're not giving contractors and individuals different standards because the city of Seattle and King County and the port and Sound Transit, we all have different standards. We're trying to standardize our approach to workforce development. Labor unions are so key, and community partners, nonprofit organizations, and leaders like you all. So, next slide. We're almost to the end. We have a program to get more people of color and women into maritime. Maritime is 75% white and 70% male. We're going to introduce more women and people of color into maritime. Those employers need to change the way they receive those new demographics because we don't want to just put people into a job and forget about them. We need the employers to create respectable work sites because now their ships or shore facilities are going to be more diverse. They need to also learn how to deal with that diversity in the workforce. Next slide, please. We are working with communities like the Duwamish Valley on green careers, and that program is going very well. Next slide. We have some priorities, and I'm almost done. Next slide. So continue to invest, continue to analyze the sectors. We are working with the taxi drivers at the airport to find out if they want to remain as taxi drivers or maybe something else. How can we help them in a culturally appropriate manner? And evaluate new sectors for the port, maybe transportation, maybe manufacturing. Next slide. That's it. So we are committed. We have dollars that have been approved by the commission. It has to be intentional, it has to be legal, but it also, the outcome has to be one that allows people to develop a career and something that they can say, this is a family wage job. Thank you very much.
Luis, thank you. Thank you very much for the work that you do and the support that you provide to allow people to experience the work and see themselves in those positions. And we'll remember your invitation to Costa Rica. Speaking of experiencing the work and seeing themselves in those positions, I have the honor to introduce to you Irene Torres. Irene Torres is a new TRP 120 graduate and current aerospace manufacturing pre-apprenticeship at AJAC at South Seattle College's Georgetown campus. Irene is expected to graduate September 7th, 2023. Irene is featured on WashDOT's PASS program, or Pre-Apprenticeship and Supportive Services Program campaign, whose mission is to provide funding for specific supportive services and pre-apprenticeship training for females, minorities, and socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. While at her time at ANU, Irene was a direct beneficiary of the WashDOT's PASS program. Irene is a Puerto Rican born and raised, young, low-income woman of color and a mother of an Afro-Latina little girl. She grew up in DSHS offices, food bank lines, and has lived at over 10 houseless shelters throughout her lifetime. In her free time, Irene enjoys writing her goals and dreams on a very large whiteboard that she thinks still isn't big enough to contain her aspirations, participating in community events around arts and culture with her daughter, listening to her eclectic taste in music, and going on urban hikes, preferably ones with views of the water. Irene is just as much interested in continuing to hone her skills in the direction her career exploration takes her, as she is making sure that she supports and advocates for holistic wraparound services for those in marginalized communities and speaking up where the system often lacks. She believes in the creativity and grit of those who have had to survive with limited resources for generations. Irene sees the construction and building trades as an opportunity to become financially self-sustainable and technically skilled enough to bring this creativity, grit, and skill out into the material and financial world to have true economic empowerment for generations to come. Irene, I invite you to.
Okay, so we're gonna do this. This is what support looks like, right? When someone calls your name, you step in and you support wherever you can. So where I really want you to start, because I think it's important. We talked a lot today about actionable items, right? And so just from your perspective, you represent the future workforce. And so what measures do you believe are necessary to ensure that young individuals like yourself from diverse communities and backgrounds have access to apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship opportunities, and which can be a stepping stone to economic success? So tell us a little bit about your the ability to tap into those resources.
So I'm actually gonna go and grab my phone because I came up with something this morning that I think will kind of click with people, and I really want to share that. So while I look for it, I'm gonna take a very deep breath because this is my first time kind of speaking in front of a bunch of people. But I really admire, and Zenovia just really highlighted like the importance of kind of speaking up and self-advocating. I find myself in a position where I oftentimes say I need help, and that's okay, and I want to exemplify that to others because I've been around many people who have struggled with really just saying, this is the situation I'm in and I need support. And oftentimes I think it's because while there are so many of you, probably everyone in here wants to change these kind of rules and systems that kind of, in a way, coerce people to feel that way. This is why we're here, right?
Yes.
So, I wrote, addressing access is the first key in a chain of keys to unlocking oftentimes gate-kept doors of opportunities. In a way, we all built these doors and locks. We have the blueprint deep within us all. And we all need to piece it together. But the resources and physical materials to get in are controlled and manipulated with complete disregard to the bigger picture. We don't have enough locksmiths that are the same, that share the same experience as ours, with lived experience, who have felt the impact of being locked out. Washington is well resourced, but sometimes we're given malfunctioning keys, sometimes made by people who don't care to follow the blueprint as a whole, to share pieces with one another. And then we don't have enough resources to even repair the key itself. It's malfunctioning. Or we don't know the locksmith. Growing up, I knew some of the few locksmiths in the city. They were my teachers, artists in community, case managers, mentors. In fact, I seek these locksmiths because I knew what it was like to feel locked out and still do. As a young low-income single mother, depending on state income, food banks, and limited resources, I find myself, and then I pause typing there, but you know what, it's my experience, so I can improvise. I find myself, in a position where I really have to self-advocate. So it just comes full circle where I'm in a position right now where one of my barriers is kind of like goes back to what Luis was talking about, accessing childcare resources and even really tedious things like childcare transportation. These odd hours that people are working, I can somewhat relate because the trades really do require you to be on time. If you're on time, you're late. You gotta be there early, and we want to be there early. Like, I have so much respect at ANU with Karen and Megan. I've learned so much about the trades and what people really have to go through, and that was just really a taste, right? But so much respect, and I think as I was introduced, when I mentioned grit, that's something that I learned at ANU, and I was able to kind of put words onto it, and I was like, man, I'm kind of like made for this, because I've just been through all these other things, and just learning to structure that and to channel it into the trades is so important. And I think a lot of us maybe who are interested in ANU or could use a program like ANU can really use that channeling and that support to pair our skill sets with these resources. I hope that answers your question.
Lived experience is very important, and I know earlier today you and I were having a conversation about some of the barriers, right, that exist, and some of the barriers that are systemic, that are built into these systems that you're trying to break through. And we talked a little bit about that as far as like income and what you can and can't make. Talk to us a little bit about that, as we have architects in the room that have the ability to build programs that we believe are helping, but then you have those systemic barriers in there as it relates to like maybe how much money you can make.
Yeah, well, something that I'm facing right now is, for example, if I graduated from ANU and I learned so much about all of the trades, and I was like, man, I want to do all of them. Can I just do all of them? But and there's so much opportunity too. But something that I felt ANU was really good at, kind of introducing us to many different people. I made so many connections. I mean, it's insane. Like, it's like a TV show almost, because you're like, what is this? And then they have you like running and doing laps. Anyways, so you meet all these cool people, you make these great connections, and I've benefited so much, even in the last, July 12th was when I graduated, and my life has changed completely. But something that I faced while at my time there was the realistic kind of view of, okay, well, if I take up an apprenticeship, I really, really have to be ready. And I made the choice to kind of enter a new pre-apprenticeship. And part of that reason, and I'm keeping it very real because this is a real choice that I made based on economic inequity, right? Is I need to really be ready to transition out of living in low income, just economic inequity. And so part of the barriers that I'm facing are like, what is gonna happen in a year when I lose my childcare? That goes back to Luis, you were talking about that. Let's see how graduates are doing even 4 years from now, because like I said, ANU does a lot. And there's all these rules and policy, and we need to wait until it changes. But then where's the now, where it's like there's people like me who are talented, who have the skill, who relate to other people, but then we have all these barriers, right? So,
Yeah. And I want you to spell it out, right? I think you said it. Do you think you should lose your daycare because you're choosing industry where you're having a livable wage? I mean, is there not an opportunity to make sure that the programs that are built actually are not built in such a way to keep you down, right? If you have to think in your mind, I want to pursue this career, but if I pursue this career, I could lose my daycare. That's wild. That's a system built to hold people down. That is not a system built to uplift people. So I don't know. Tina, help me on that, right? You good. Tina knows everything. Tina, help me on that. Because I think for you, because you have to make that decision, then what we as a community need to figure out what other resources are available to you. So I'll ask you this question because I know I want you to sit with us on the panel if you're comfortable doing that. But tell me why. Why are you choosing pre-apprentice, and why is now, a good time for you to make this change in your life?
so and by change, can you clarify?
Of course. Like change. So you were dependent maybe on the system for whatever reason, right? And you're deciding I'm going to make a change where I no longer need to be dependent on that system. Why are you doing that?
Well, thank you. So I think I would be the first generation landowner. My mom actually took up a welding program, and to my knowledge, she didn't really get past actually getting her certificate, so in a way it's to honor her. My wife is my daughter. I have an 8-year-old, and she was so proud of me at graduation. I don't know if you saw her, Karen, but her eyes lit up. And at that moment, I knew that she saw me and she's gonna take it even further, because that's what I'm doing with my mom, Really, and I want to take my work back to Puerto Rico, and everything's coming full circle. It's beautiful. I'm talking to Luis, and I'm in aerospace manufacturing, and I want to take my work back to Puerto Rico eventually, and green energy, and because we're going through a lighting crisis where our infrastructure isn't the best, and just all these things, just so much opportunity. I really want to be in a position where I'm not tired all the time, and I'm able to really sustain myself enough to provide for my daughter and be able to reach out to others, because I really do believe in everyone who I've met and shared community with. And so I'm really honored to be able to share that with you guys. It's really personal, and it's not easy. People should be paid. That's another thing for their work is, people who have lived experience are so valuable, but it comes almost at it's really vulnerable. We have to, kind of share these things to really change stuff. If we don't share these things, they're not going to change. No one would ever know, right? And so I hope that my vulnerability earlier with just even asking you, like, hey, I need support right now. Like, that was just, it's really my life story, especially this past year, getting into ANU. I got all this support from ANU, and I called them and I was like, I need help. And they explained things to me, and they were very patient. But even then it's hard, right? Because ANU can only do so much. Right, and so I had to do all these things. I had to get uncomfortable. This past year might be my first time really asking for help, so things like that.
Good. Well, we're going to hear more from you. Thank you so much, Irene. All right, so we are going to start with our chamber executives here. So we're going to start with Diane. Diane, entrepreneurship can be a powerful tool for economic advancement. Can you share examples of how your chamber has encouraged and facilitated entrepreneurship among underrepresented groups, contributing to a more diverse and inclusive business landscape?
Absolutely. I would be delighted to discuss how we've approached supporting entrepreneurship within underrepresented groups and fostering a more diverse and inclusive business environment. Not all chambers value this, and even sometimes different leadership at chambers have different approaches, but this is something I really wanted to build into my tenure, and I'm also committed to staying open to continual growth and feedback on this because it will always be a process. One of the prime ways our chamber has built opportunities and resources for entrepreneurship among underrepresented groups is through targeted mentorship and training programs. We recognize that individuals from diverse backgrounds may face unique challenges in starting and growing their businesses, and that representation and similar lived experience may also be lacking in traditional networks or chambers. To address this, we've established mentorship initiatives where seasoned entrepreneurs offer guidance, insight, and practical advice to aspiring business owners. These mentors not only share their knowledge, but also act as role models, inspiring confidence and determination among underrepresented entrepreneurs. We also recognize there's a need for hard, tangible resources and not just peer networks, so we've mobilized through multiple and varied initiatives to facilitate access to capital for underrepresented entrepreneurs. Financial barriers often hinder the progress of underrepresented groups, and we've collaborated with financial institutions and programs like the Intercity Capital Connections through the Initiative for Competitive Intercity to create special loan programs, grants, and investment opportunities tailored to their needs. The Intercity Capital Connections is a tuition-free executive leadership training program that provides not just training for small businesses in underrepresented communities, but also provides direct mentorship and connections toward capital. Together with our partners in Kaiser Permanente, our chamber has been a leader in the state in sponsorship of small businesses into this program. By easing the financial burden, we seek to empower entrepreneurs from all walks of life to turn their innovative ideas into a thriving business. In terms of networking, our chamber hosts regular events that encourage cross-industry collaboration and connection building. We believe that diverse business landscape thrives on the exchange of ideas from different perspectives. These events provide platforms where underrepresented entrepreneurs can connect with potential partners, clients, and investors, thereby expanding their horizons and growth opportunities. Education is another cornerstone of our efforts. We've organized workshops, seminars, and panel discussions focusing on entrepreneurship-related topics ranging from business planning and marketing strategies to legal and regulatory aspects. These educational initiatives equip underrepresented entrepreneurs with the knowledge and skills needed to navigate the complexities of the business world confidently. To foster a culture of inclusivity, our chamber actively promotes diversity in leadership positions. We believe that by highlighting successful individuals from underrepresented groups and leadership roles, we can inspire others to aim for leadership positions and break down barriers. We showcase these success stories through various channels, demonstrating that entrepreneurship knows no boundaries and contributes more representation and diversity in our daily feeds. We've been very intentional in inviting individuals to the table who represent the vast diversity of the community that we live in, Renton, which is at one point referred to the 9th most diverse city in the nation. Our board is incredibly diverse, as is our ambassador program. In collaboration with our local educational institutions, our chamber has also introduced youth entrepreneurship programs in underserved communities. By introducing the concept of entrepreneurship at an early age, we plant the seeds of innovation and inquiry. These programs not only teach practical business skills, but also instill a mindset of resiliency and creativity. Lastly, our chamber engages in advocacy efforts to create a more inclusive business environment at the policy level. We work closely with lawmakers and relevant authorities to promote policies that encourage diversity, equity, and inclusivity in the business landscape. By influencing the regulatory framework, we aim to remove systemic obstacles and create a level playing field for all aspiring entrepreneurs. This is a huge part of our responsibility, that we aren't just teaching folks how to have successful business in a hostile environment. We need to advocate for equitable and inclusive frameworks as well. Thanks for giving me that question.
Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. what I heard from that, we heard the word underrepresented a lot. And I think sometimes when you have this limited belief about diversity, equity, and inclusion, when you hear underrepresented, your mind probably automatically clicks to someone of color, right? But we have to be mindful that that includes people that are hearing impaired. That includes folks whose English is not the first language. That is a cultural, your culture, and if your business can take a loan or not take a loan, all of those things. That's when we're talking about this and we're having our roundtables. We're using these words underrepresented, but I just want you to know what we're really talking about here. Color is important. Racism is real. Black people have not been able to access a variety of resources to ensure their economic equality and equity. But what we're talking about here is the full scope of diversity. We are not only talking about race, and I appreciate that. And I have been able to engage in those conversations with community, with you, for the chamber. Treasurer, do we call you treasurer? Okay, cool. Treasurer. So tell me about the economic disparities that lead to systemic issues, right? So based on your role, can you provide us with information about measurable impact that addressing economic inequities can have on the BIPOC-owned businesses, our broader economy, and also the state's fiscal health? Yep, probably on the bottom.
How's that? Well, thank you for that question. It's actually a good follow-up to a lot of what I was talking about earlier. I mean, the reason that we talk about issues of baby bonds, the Washington Future Fund, is because it is foundational to the strength of our economy. We want people to, as we were talking about earlier, people should be able to reach their God-given potential.
Yes.
And the barriers that are in place deny not only that individual the opportunity to that personal growth, which they should have a right to, but it also denies the larger economy the skills that person has currently and that would continue to grow in a way that creates additional economic vitality for the larger state. So all of those things are important. It's also why all these things, there's intersectionality and all these different issues, but I did not talk earlier about issues of retirement. But issues of retirement also lead to opportunities for larger growth for folks. I mean, when I think about, that's one of the story yesterday, so I'll mention it again. I mean, my mom, my grandmother, she passed away recently at 102 years old, 130 years old. She spent her entire career as a cleaning lady as a janitor. She worked very hard. Her easiest day is still harder than my hardest day. But she was lucky enough to work in the state system. And as a result, she had a pension. And as a result, she had dignified retirement. And that dignified retirement not only provided an opportunity for her, something she earned, and that she had a right to, but I spent every summer with her growing up in upstate New York, every summer. And not only did I learn a lot from her for a number of reasons, and both my grandparents, as many of us have had that, if we've had that opportunity, but it also lightened the load for my parents, where it will send me off to be taken care of by my grandparents. And that provided opportunities. So we're talking about issues of childcare. I just finished a 39-county tour visiting each of our 39 counties, 121 different meetings. The two issues that came up, no matter where we are, we started talking about it today, but it's important on the larger aspect. Mm-hmm. Housing, childcare. I don't care where you were in the state, housing, childcare. And so all of these things that are played with each other and ultimately all tie to economic growth and the opportunity for folks to participate in the system, but also allow for really just the opportunity for our economy to fully benefit from everyone's full potential.
Yeah, thank you for that. So what is dignified retirement? Is there another way to retire? Undignified? Dignified retirement.
I think it's not, look, I mean,
Sorry.
No, but I think it's important to point out, 2 out of 3 millennials, 0 retirement savings. 2 out of 3. 1 out of 4 gig workers. In a recent survey plan to work until they die. That is not sustainable. And, the reality is the state treasurer, it's the treasurer of the state of Washington. I mean, I'm always thinking about issues that affect our state treasurer with a long-term view, 10, 20, 30, 40 years out. And You know, a lot of our economic growth right now is from baby boomers who are retired and spending money in our economy. Well, if we're in a situation where folks not only are not spending money, but they're not able to meet their basic needs, well, that's going to put a strain on our state treasury. And meeting the essential services that should be provided at that point to those who need it.
Yeah.
Right? And so, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, just access to retirement in itself, and people should have that opportunity, is to take by themselves.
Wonderful, thank you for that. We're going to switch over a little bit to workforce because I think obviously that's part of the economy. We should be very mindful of our what's happening in workforce development. So because it is tied to economic opportunities. So Louis, what info can you provide that illustrates the impact of economic disparities on workforce representation, skill development, career investment for people of color here in South King County?
Well, we know the demographics have shifted. The people of color, immigrant and refugee communities are now the workforce that is present. And as our employers at the airport, in particular, since we are in South King County, our employers at the airport are desperate in some instances to find new employees. We're trying to help them through an organization like Port Jobs. We operate an employment center at the airport, and we bring folks from the community. And with the help of our partner in employment, we also reach out specifically to the immigrant refugee communities to tell them what the jobs are available at the airport. But that is just one component, trying to help employers find the workers they need. But the other component is what we call the skilled, the professional level employment. We want those same communities have access to those higher level careers as well. And one of the things that we are trying to work on is the leadership. Representation matters. In construction, if the crew chief or the supervisor of the construction site is a very qualified white male who is probably doing a very good job, but if the people of color who are in the apprenticeship program, someone like Irene, does not see herself represented in that leadership role of that job site or the ownership of the company, right? How can we as public agencies begin to influence that? So we are putting in place a program to develop leadership skills for apprentices, for journey workers, so they become the next foreperson, the next leader of the crew. So when the next generation of apprentices come in, they see themselves there. So those are things that we're trying to pay attention to. It is not enough to get someone to a job. It has to go beyond that, and the investments and the intentionality has to match it.
Yeah, I just want to touch a little bit more when you talked about people being able to see themselves, right? So as you're inviting these people into your space, ensure that you have the ability to receive them in such a way that they don't want to leave. Retention is very important, and I know with these particular jobs, and we're talking about the trades, retention is low, and it's because while we want to change the landscape, we haven't actually done the work to ensure that the people that are in charge understand fully what they need and the people that they're bringing in. So shout out to Airport Jobs. I love Airport Jobs. I think it's an absolutely wonderful program. And then I'll make this one. I did say I don't like statistics, but I will make this. The biracial community, according to the last census, grew over 230%. And so if you think for a second that your workforce that you currently have is going to remain the same, the data will tell you different. You are literally going to have to dodge people of color if you want to continue the workforce the way that it is. So Louis, were you gonna go into that as far as being able to see yourself in a position?
Correct, and not only the BIPOC community, but women as well entering the workforce. We want women to be successful, to be respected, creating a respectable job site where sexism and racism is no longer an issue that they have to deal with. So they can then concentrate on other very important issues like childcare, right? So we are trying to address those barriers that exist. And representation is so important because if you have a leader of a crew who is a woman who has children, well, it is much easier for a an apprentice to go and speak to that person about her very issues, or a single male who is a parent that has issues with childcare. It is much easier to find a person of color that will be much more understanding, other than someone who traditionally would say, well, figure it out. It's not that easy, right? So representation matters, and we have to include that in our programs. And navigation and retention are now a key component of all of our contracts that we have with organizations like CANU. So retention and navigation, it is not just enough to get someone to a certificate, but let's help you in the next 2-3 years get to where you really want to go.
Yeah. So doing that foundational work, but then also opening a door. I'm not sure what I was reading the other day, but a woman, she said, when you get to the place where you're supposed to be, your job is not to slam the door behind you. It's your job to leave that door open. And so I think it's important that you highlighted the importance of seeing people in the workplace that you can relate to, that they can truly understand. When you talk about that, Annie, just from a business standpoint, right? And we talk about being able to see yourselves and opportunities and networking. I joined the Kent Chamber of Commerce as a member back in 2000, maybe in 12, something like that, 11, 12, something like that. And I was working at a university, and I went to this event at the Kent Chamber of Commerce, and I could only stay for about 15 minutes, not because I was time constrained, because I was the only Black person in the room, and every single person that I talked to wanted to know why I was in that room. As if me just being there was not an indication that I want to showcase my business like everybody else. And I worked for a university, so it's not like I was representing myself. I say all that because we have to create an environment where people feel comfortable and confident. And so when that position came open and I said, oh, I'm going to apply for that, I made sure that anyone of color, anyone who is disabled, anyone who is having a hard time or hearing impaired, that they feel comfortable. No one will leave my event in 15 to 10 minutes because they cannot stand it. They will leave because they have another opportunity that was cultivated by the chamber. So with that in mind, Annie, I do want you to talk about, your support in minority business or minority-owned businesses, and you understand that it is essential for economic equity. Can you highlight specific programs and partnerships the Seattle Southside Chamber has developed to assist these businesses in overcoming challenges and thriving in this economy?
Thank you for that. Oh, am I on?
There we go.
You're
Thank
on.
you, Zenovia. So you were absolutely 100% spot on with your comments just now. And I think all chambers need to be doing this work to make sure that people understand that the chamber is a place where everyone is welcome and that we are there to support everybody in their needs and their goals. Our mission at the Seattle Southside Chamber is to create a strong economic environment for all in Southwest King County. And I think you guys saw the slide that Luis shared with us earlier. The communities that we serve, of Irene, Des Moines, SeaTac, Tequila, Norby Park, they were all very clearly in the low equity areas that were highlighted on that map. So we have a lot of work to do, and we cannot do that work without the input of the diverse perspectives that are part of our community. We simply cannot do that work without engagement with everyone in our community. So our chamber works really hard, and I know that Diane and Zenovia's chambers do as well, as do chambers across state, to make sure that we are creating an inclusive environment where our members are heard, where our members are appreciated, and where our members are welcomed, and we are serving them in their very diverse needs. So as a regional chamber that serves 5 different communities, we have an incredibly diverse community, but we also have an incredibly diverse membership. In order to be effective and in order to really serve our members and create an organization that they feel welcome in and a part of, it starts with our organization itself and our board, and making sure that we're recruiting a very broad range of perspectives and voices on our board of directors and our leadership. So that means we have small business owners, we have corporate business owners, we have nonprofits, we have school districts and community organizers. But it also means that we are actively recruiting BIPOC and women-owned and operated businesses, that we are
being immigrant-owned businesses, we need to have those diverse perspectives at the top of our leadership. And it also means that we have a staff that reflects our community too. So we seek to hire people who reflect our community that we serve. And our team embodies our mission. And I just really want to highlight our team here in the room today. We've heard Samantha Lay's name many times already today because Sammy is a tremendous leader in our community. She embodies our mission. She's also our executive director of our Success Foundation. And if I can tell you that, we're hearing representation matters, the kids in our program, we have 15 students from the Tukwila and Highline School District join us for a career pathway exploratory program just 2 weeks ago. We're all so tired. It was 15 kids in the office for a whole week. We're exhausted. But at the end of that week, after taking the kids out into these different career path opportunities, industries that they didn't really know existed, career pathways within those industries that they didn't know existed, it opened up doors, it opened up ideas and aspirations that they hadn't been exposed to before. And I can tell you that the leadership of that program and how intentional the program was, and Sammy's leadership at the helm of it meant so much to these kids. The 15 students, I think just about every one of them said, to see a Vietnamese immigrant leading in this position as our executive director and running this program, this is really opening up doors for me and making me see myself in positions and rooms that I hadn't before. I also, but can we give a round of applause? I also want to recognize Mustafa, who has just joined our team about 2 months ago. He's already our business outreach and membership manager, and I think he's already probably talked to 100 businesses in the 2 months that he's been here, so we just really appreciate Mustafa's leadership. And Max too, I think Max might be hiding somewhere, but he's outside, but that's our team. And like I said, our team embodies our mission. There are some practical things that we're doing too in terms of trying to bring new people into the chamber that maybe haven't seen themselves there before. I think that we encounter challenges just explaining what a chamber is to people who are not familiar with our work and what we're there to do. People think we're a government agency. They usually think we're working out of the city. They think that we're down, the Main Street organization. We're organizing wine walks, which is a great thing to do, and we do that. But we do a lot of other things too. We're not like doing wizard training at the chamber. It's hard to explain. So getting that message out there, getting people in the door, and then when you come in the door, making sure they don't leave after 15 minutes. Like, this is not the place that I want to be. So we've instituted a universal membership. So if somebody wants to check out our chamber and become a member, we remove the barriers of cost for companies that have 5 or less employees in the first year. They can join our chamber and they get chamber communications, chamber event pricing, and they are a chamber member. They are part of our family. We want to bring them in. I also, and I know we're short on time, but I will make one last plug-in for some of the programs we're doing. But our ambassador committee is just absolutely amazing. Our ambassadors are more than just event support and helping us, which they do. But our ambassadors are really there to make sure that our members are seen and that they are engaged with at our events. We don't want someone to come into an event, a networking event, and not know anybody there and stand in the corner and feel that they're not welcome and they're out of place and this isn't somewhere they want to return. So our ambassadors are really there to reach out to people who are new to our events, reach out to people who maybe aren't making connections in the room, find out a little bit about why they're there. What are your goals? Why are you interested in this chamber to begin with? What are your aspirations? What are your pain points? What do you do really well? Who do you want to meet? And they make those connections in the room. So we're working at it. We have a lot of work to do, but the message is that chambers are doing very important work. We provide a lot of small business assistance and technical support, and we please spread the word because everyone is welcome here, and we have a broad range of services because we have a very diverse set of members, and we want to meet everybody's needs in the best way we can.
Of course. Yeah. I do want to switch it over to you, Irene, as we talk about, what we need. I don't work in the space of apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship, and I'm not sure. Raise your hand if that's your zhuzh, if you are in the realm, thank you Megan, in the realm of pre-apprenticeship, talk to us about the opportunities that are there and maybe what it's been able to really do for you as it relates to your education, apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship.
Yeah, so I was actually, and I remember initially earlier someone, had mentioned that we should open up avenues in college spaces towards the trades. I was actually in that position. So I was doing my GED at Bellevue College. Like I was taking these classes that would go towards my GED. And I just felt like I really couldn't think past my GED. And I was like, I need community. I need a living wage. I need camaraderie. And I got that through all these networking events. Could you reiterate a bit of that, please?
Yeah, I made it up, so I'll have to go back in my brain. But just basically, what is it that you need in that, and why apprenticeship? Like, why didn't you go? I mean, listen, Dick's is paying $24.50 and will pay for college, right? So you can also go and work at Dick's and get $24.50. So why are you choosing this type of career or exploring these type of careers?
Yeah, so for me, it's really also too like I really like the physical aspect of it. I really like I said, the camaraderie, like Dick's, maybe you have a couple friends that you flip burgers with, but like in the trades, it's really like you have friends who are skilled, who like, if you want to build a home, you have everyone you need, so once I get my land, I'm going to call all of you, it's really like, it's really cool. Like it's nice to build community around skill sets rather than survival. That's something I think my family really grew up around, was like, let's get together with people that we can just survive with. Let's maybe meet up at this bus stop outside of the shelter and just talk all day long and figure out where we're gonna get our next meal and bond that way, which is, I've made great friends that way, people who I really admire and are really strong individuals. But at the same time, it's okay to, we have a birthright to these resources, all of us do. And really, I've been saying that, so it's funny, I heard you say that today, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, we deserve to live joyfully. We have all the resources that we need on this planet, so.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's important. The company you keep is very important, right? And who is there to inspire you and uplift you, and putting yourselves in positions like in this room, right? If I were you, I'd be talking to the legislators that are here because they need to definitely hear from someone with lived experience. They're tired of hearing from me and Diane and Annie, quite frankly. So you are the reason why change will happen, is because you have that lived experience and can speak directly to their hearts. I know we're almost out of time, but I have a question for each of you, because we are, in the spirit of transformation and the spirit of giving you something that you can walk away with today. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to kind of just answer this last question. So in this room, I've taken a look at the registration form. We have folks from education, healthcare, and business backgrounds. Louis, how can they align their efforts with the workforce development initiatives to collectively address economic disparities, ensure a well-prepared, inclusive workforce for the future?
Well, as a public agency, we have a responsibility to inform those partners that we need to move the needle in the right direction. So I work with other public agencies. We call ourselves RPO, Regional Public Owners, the city, the county, and the state, ourselves, Sound Transit, and other jurisdictions. So we collectively try to come up with a similar message. Then I take that message and translate it into Port of Seattle authority, speech, and budget. Now that I have that, I also allow myself to find the data, common data that maybe the public agencies have on the needs of employers. Now that I have the need of employers, I have the internal authority, and I have colleagues that we're all thinking the same, I need to bring this to colleges, for instance. A college may have some incredible workforce development programs, but they never thought of airport ground equipment maintenance, right? That's something that we now know it's a need, and I have some interest. So now I can partner with a college to say, can you develop a program to educate individuals and become certified as mechanics for specialized equipment at airports? Then the same thing applies in in construction. Now we know that there is a gap, and I showed the slide. All of us public agencies need to share that information with our partners like you, the colleges, and others that are working in the space of construction. But it is not just simply by telling them we need X number of carpenters or electricians. Now we have the intentionality behind it. Can we make that gap, fill that gap with women, people of color, immigrant refugees? And with that comes a need of language access, culturally appropriate. So working with organizations like our great partner in employment that specializes in immigrant refugee communities, how can we bring those communities into the gap so the employers will find employees they need qualified? So it's a whole ecosystem, but it has to function in a collaborative manner, and I think you're the one that mentioned that collaboration is key.
Yeah.
And that's my approach, and we'll continue that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote down a couple of things, and I don't know if you said it in this order on purpose or is that just the way that it came out, but I like for folks to do the work, right? I'm not big on data. I mean, data exists and we know that these systems have barriers within them. So you said first authorize, right? Get the folks, starts at the top, get the folks kind of behind the mission of what needs to happen, and then get the budget for that, and then go to the people. Don't go to the people without a budget and the authority from above, because now you're going to be another person maybe that disappoints that particular community. And so I don't know if that was purposeful, but I guess my suggestion would be to ensure that you have the funds, because the data is already there, right? Your organization either wants to make an impact or it does not. If someone has to come in and give you a thesis on inequities within the system, you're probably in the wrong seat. The data is there, right? And so you have this idea that the authority is there. You have the wherewithal, you have your partners, you're in community, you have the money, you've collected the data. Now be very intentional about your collaboration and bringing people in. Thank you so much for that, Louis. Treasurer, I like saying that. Jesse, do you get to say that? Okay, I feel, what do you call? Mike P. I like it. I just feel so, authoritative, like, Treasurer, answer my question.
Absolutely, CEO.
Yes, wonderful. Can you provide a key takeaway, again, as we have our healthcare professionals and diverse group of business leaders here, key takeaway or actionable steps that each group can implement to contribute closing the economic opportunity and equity gap in their respective fields? So you can choose one: healthcare, educators, business owners.
I'll try to do them all. I mean, that's why I was talking about the Washington Future Fund and communicate to your legislators your thoughts on that. Because obviously, individually, there's so much that each of you can do, and I think we've heard just great discussions from the panelists on ways to engage that way. But everyone has a role, right? I mean, we're hearing from private sector, from business community, we're hearing from public agencies, but obviously, the policies matter. State level is going to matter, the national level too. We don't have as much. I can't speak to that, but I can speak to the policies at state level that can really move things forward. And communicating your thoughts as to those issues to your elected officials further reinforces things need to happen. And they hear from a lot of folks. I mean, as a former legislator, Jesse's former legislator, we hear from a lot of folks. It is absolutely important and critical that you continue to communicate to legislators kind of the world we want to see, and that really moves things forward in a positive way.
Yeah. I read up, Jesse had an opportunity to share with me about that future fund, and I purchased my first home at the age of 25 working at a call center, coming from very, very low income family, but it was my encouragement and the company that I kept that led me to be able to do that. And I think we need to wrap our arms around, right, and our resources around folks that have those aspirations. And I hope that something like this, the Future Fund, is something that we can embrace as a community. I'm not advocating for it. I'm not saying how you should vote at all whatsoever in the least bit. What I'm saying though is just making sure that you do your research and your due diligence to see how you can set a path for other kids. I'm going to be honest, I'm not worried about my daughter. I worked way too hard to be worried about how my daughter's going to buy a home. I will take care of that. But I am worried about my neighbor's daughter and son. right? And so if you worry more about folks that you can help and less about how you can help yourself, I think that we would move the needle on this just a little bit further. So that's in the vein of that. Thank you so much. Again, Diane, you work with all types of businesses. And so what strategies have you witnessed that effectively bridge the gap between different sectors, fostering a holistic approach to economic opportunity and equity?
Thank you. Communication. And by communication, it's not just talking, but it's hearing and listening. And for those that have the ability, showing up. So special thanks today to Representative Orwell and Senator Hasagawa. Thank you for showing up. I'm sure you will take the messaging back, and I hope you take back the feels that you had by sitting in the room and immersing yourself in the conversation too. But communication for me is key.
Yeah, communication is key. Vulnerability, right? It's hard for people to say that they need help, maybe, right? But you know that they need help. So that is key. So vulnerability and communication. Thank you so much for that, Diane. I'm going to go with you, Irene. What advice can you give or offer this diverse group of businesses to actively contribute to breaking down economic barriers and fostering opportunities for all?
Oh man, something that I've seen that could be expanded on is just access to more internships in your businesses, paid positions in mentorship, getting diverse backgrounds in. I like I said earlier, it was these locksmiths, I call them, that were my teachers, my mentors, who really made me passionate about what I am, and it's, self-development and really just community building and speaking on these issues. So I really just having people who could really mentor you. I mean, even the program that Luis is speaking on, where we're just bringing in more leaders and really making sure that they can sustain themselves. Even me personally, I want to be able to share my talents. There's so many others out there who need to be reached, and if I didn't have people reaching out to me, I don't know where I'd be. So
Yeah, and internships. I don't know the definition of internship, but I know when I was growing up, internship meant free work, free ideas. And you don't have someone interning for you that has absolutely no skills. That just does not exist. And so you are paying them for their internship, for their knowledge, if nothing else. I think we have to get out of this mindset, and I don't know if at a college level, is that still just a thing where internships are important, but internships that are paid, I think, is where we're gonna really be able to close the gap, because it gives that person confidence. Could you imagine? You know how many times I worked for free? I worked for free so many times, and I gave so much of my time and so much of my energy. Now I do this for free, but I don't do anything for free. It's not because I'm better than you. I just don't do anything for free, because you're gonna get more than what you have on paper. And that's true for most people, right? It's not just that she can be an apprentice and she can build widgets and she can build this tiny home. She can also tell you how to support the community that she came from and give you access to a community you never had access to, and she can become your trusted messenger. So again, it's very important that you say that internship and mentorship is critical, but make sure that we're paying folks for their knowledge. Annie, given the presence of everybody that's in the room today, what collaborative initiatives or partnerships have you seen succeed in the chamber that serve as models for cross-sector efforts to promote economic equality? I keep saying equality. I'm so sorry. Why are you turning it on? I keep saying equality, right? Equity and equality are two different things. And so I'm just going to apologize real quick. I do know the difference, but I talk fast. And so I keep saying that. But raise your hand if you know the difference between equality and equity. Okay. This is why I should have had a slide, because I have a picture, right? So close your eyes. Imagine that you are, there's a picture and there's a baseball field. On the sideline of that baseball field, there is a fence, okay? One picture is going to represent equity, right? That fence is so high that some of those people behind that fence cannot see. So equity would call for you to build a ramp 3 steps, 4 steps, whatever you need so that each individual person has the same vision over that fence. Okay? That is equity. Equality would mean that field is there, the fence is there, and there are folks on the other side that cannot see. So you're going to be equal, and you're going to give them each 1 step to stand on to look over the fence. That's not equity. Equity is what we need. Equality is equal. Everybody gets the same. Even with that, the person in the wheelchair, you can give them a step, but unfortunately they can't get on the step, so they still can't see. So it's equity that we're striving for. So I just wanted to make that note that I do know the difference between equality and equity. Annie?
Okay, well, I know that we're running over, so I'm gonna be really brief, but we talked about practical solutions today, practical things that we can all do, and hearing from the panelists, I couldn't agree more that mentorship is just so crucial in opening up access to those who have been shut out. So I would just encourage everybody in this room to donate your time, donate your expertise, and listen for when, like, we're talking about being vulnerable and being brave and being honest and asking when we need support. Be listening for that, and so when you can step in and you can provide that mentorship that is so desperately needed in our communities. So just be selfless with your time and look for those opportunities.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much to our panel. I appreciate you. Round of applause for our panelists. Thank you for being with us here today.